So guys, we continue chapter 6, supply, demand and government policies, and in this video we're going to look at market outcome when government imposed taxes on the market. So government imposed taxes in order to provide public good for our citizens. And if we're talking about public goods, we're talking about that government imposed taxes in order to build roads, bridges, remember school, this is a public good, so we do need to support schools, therefore we're paying taxes. We're talking about national defense, we're talking about police, firefighters and stuff like that. So parks that we have, so this is public goods, and in order for government to provide for us, so they need to impose taxes. Okay, remember, all the time the question is how much taxes we pay, and either all taxes used the way we want it to be used, that's another question. And the definition that tax incident, this is when we impose tax on the market, how is that burden of the tax shared among participants on the market? And who the participants? These are buyers and sellers. So therefore tax incidence, this is how the tax burden is shared between buyers and sellers on the market. And when government decided, for example, to impose taxes, they can impose taxes only on seller or only on buyer. And we're going to look at two different scenarios when the government imposed taxes only on seller and see how the outcome on the market is changing. And then we're going to look at another example when the government imposes taxes on buyers and how the outcome is going to change. And we're going to look what is the difference between these two when we impose taxes on one side of the market or the other. So we're going to start with the imposing taxes on sellers and see how market outcome is going to change. So let's suppose that we are going to have market again for a certain product. Let's suppose market for pizza or ice cream. Let's suppose pizza. And we'll have supply and demand. Again, everybody is hopefully writing this down with me. Remember, when you're doing this with me, it means that you are doing active learning. You will remember it's better. So we have supply and demand. And let's suppose that our equilibrium is going to be equal exactly of $3 for pizza, probably kind of like cheap pizza over here that we have $3, and our equilibrium is going to be exactly of 100 units. So here you go. This is the market for pizza, initial situation on the market. Now, government decided to say, well, you know what, we need to finance some kind of project, and we're going to impose tax on each unit of pizza in the amount of 50 cents, and we're going to collect this tax from seller. So we imposing tax in the amount of 50 cents on each unit of pizza. And what government wants to do, they want to collect taxes only from sellers, like leave the buyers on its own, and we're just going to collect tax from sellers. So in order to determine how this tax is going to affect buyers and sellers, we're going to again use these three steps in analyzing equilibrium. Remember, we're going to determine which curve is going to be affected, which way the curve is going to shift, and then what happened in the new equilibrium. Guys, when we impose tax on seller, this is a kind of like our determinant. You impose tax on seller or on buyer, okay, one of the curves are going to shift. So this is a kind of like our determinants, and therefore, the market outcome is going to change. So just think about when we impose tax on seller, which curve is going to shift? Supply or demand curve? Of course, supply curve. So supply curve shifts. So now, what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to have greater supply or less supply when we impose tax on sellers? When we impose tax on sellers, supply curve is going to actually decrease. And guys, what do we need to remember over here? That supply is going to decrease by exact amount of the tax. So the supply is going to decrease or shift by exact amount of the tax. I'm going to show to you in a second on the graph. And then, looking at new equilibrium, we're going to determine, new price and quantity. So let's suppose I'm going to take a certain scale, okay, on my graph. Once again, it doesn't, just whatever you want your scale to be, but I'm going to say that this is 50 cents. So everywhere, all these kind of lines that I have over here, it's going to be 50 cents. Okay, so therefore, when I am going to shift my supply curve, remember we determined that supply curve is going to decrease when we impose tax on sellers. It's going to decrease exactly by 50 cents. So let's suppose over here I'm going to put that this is, our 50 cents. Okay, not the best scale, but it means that over here everything is 50 cents, and therefore I'm decreasing my supply by exact amount of the tax. This is the key. Remember this for the test. So when we impose tax on seller, supply curve is decreasing by exact amount of the tax. Now let's look at this, let's look at this graph and see what happens here on the market. Do you see kind of our new equilibrium on the market where all demand and new supply, they meet over here at one and the same point? They meet over here at one and the same point. So over here we're going to have a new price that is formed on the market. I'm going to put it for right now that this is $3.30, and I explain to you later why it's exactly $3.30. So guys, just think about it. Now, when we impose a tax on the market, natural forces worked its way that the price of the product had actually increased because we have decrease in supply. Okay, now just think about it. Buyers, they come to the market and they pay $3.30 to a seller. Is seller keeping all the money right now? And the answer is no, because now seller need to pay 50 cents to the government. So does seller keep all $3.30? And the answer is no. So therefore, when we impose a tax on the market, we kind of going to have two prices over here. This $3.30, this is going to be, I'm going to put PB. This is price that buyers are paying right now for the product. Remember, so everywhere over here in between my two lines, this is 50 cents, isn't it? So sellers, they got this $3.30 for pizza. Now, what are they going to end up with? They're going to end up with 50 cents less. And sellers are going to keep only $2.80 for each pizza that they are selling. So therefore, $2.80, this is going to be price that sellers are receiving. So once again, when we impose a tax on the market, we're going to have this wedge between price that buyers are paying and price that sellers are receiving. Buyers came to the market, they paid $3.30. Do sellers keep all the money? And the answer is no. Remember, everywhere between these two graphs, I have 50 cents because this is the scale that I choose, initially. So from this new equilibrium, we're going to go and kind of decrease the $3.30 by 50 cents. Okay, I met exactly with my old supply curve, and therefore from here I'm going to put that this is $2.80, and this is going to be price that sellers are receiving. So therefore, if we're going to look at this graph, guys, just think about it. How is the burden of the tax is shared between sellers and buyers on the market? Remember, the goal of the government was only to collect taxes from sellers. Okay, are buyers worse off after we impose a tax on seller? And the answer is yes, because now buyers paying this higher price. Are sellers worse off after we impose a tax on the market? Yes, because now sellers are actually receiving a lower price. Remember, before we impose a tax on the market and the price was exactly $3, buyers, they paid $3, sellers exactly kept $3. Now, since sellers have to pay the tax on the market, just natural forces on the market are going to work. That supply is going to decrease. When we decrease supply, it means that the price of the product is actually increasing. Okay, now when the price has increased, buyers are paying this price, but sellers are going to keep 50 cents less because they need to send tax to the government. So therefore, we have these two prices form on the market. And remember, looking at this, what kind of conclusions are we going to make? That even though taxes were imposed on sellers, buyers still paying the portion of the tax, because remember, this is 50 cents, isn't it? So this distance between price that buyers are paying and sellers are receiving are actually going to be 50 cents. So out of that 50 cents, if you're going to look somewhere over here, take a different color, that buyers actually paid 30 cents in taxes and sellers paid 20 cents in taxes. This is how tax was distributed to between buyers and sellers. Why exactly the tax was distributed this way, we're going to learn in later videos. It depends on elasticity, but the point is that it doesn't matter if we impose tax on seller, both buyers and sellers are going to be affected by this policy. So these three, we can put that price that the buyers are paying is increasing, price that sellers are receiving is going to decrease, guys. And everybody look at the graph and tell me what happened with the quantity equilibrium. All of a sudden, quantity equilibrium has actually decreased, so therefore we can tell that taxes discourages economic activity. Now we're selling less units, so therefore taxes discourages economic activities. So I know there's a lot on this graph, but step by step you kind of need to understand. Let's make a kind of conclusion over here. So tax on sellers, they they shift the supply curve exactly by the exact amount of the tax. Please remember that. Price that buyers are paying is going to increase by less than the amount of the tax. It's just, this is how natural forces are working on the market. So guys, just think about again, if we have supply and demand, so that was our price of $3. When we decrease our supply curve by 50 cents, does it mean that price that the buyers are paying right now is going to increase by 50 cents? And the answer is no. Just think about it. This is 50 cents, okay? Just look at this line that was initial equilibrium. Do you see that these 50 cents are actually kind of split in two different groups? So therefore, the price that we going to pay right now is going to increase, but by less than 50 cents. Okay, this is just how the natural forces work on the market. Price that buyers are paying is going to increase by less than 50 cents. And then price that sellers are receiving is actually going to be less than initial. Okay, so price that sellers are receiving is decreasing. Quantity sold on the market is decreasing. So therefore, taxes discourage economic activity. Okay, so because now we're producing and selling less units, so it's not good for the economy. Okay, and our question is again, who pays the tax? Are sellers paying the tax? Remember, the goal was to impose a tax on sellers. Are sellers the only ones who are paying the tax? And the answer is no. The tax, the burden of the tax is shared between buyers and sellers. In a way that we're going to explain why exactly like that. It depends on elasticity, but both buyers and sellers are going to pay the tax.